Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Tim Albright. You are joining the Plug and Play Solutions for Modern Workspaces. Joined by a couple of really great folks. First, Ben Cook from Shure. How are you, sir?
Very good. How are you today?
Good. I got to see Ben in real life. He's a real human being. Last week at Enterprise Connect, Steph and I got to hang out with him. And also with us is Mr. Gary Kay. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate you asking me to join this.
Absolutely. Gary, you are the expert when it comes to the launch platform. So I'm going to have you give us a tour of the different buttons and the different areas that folks are seeing.
Well, first, I'm honored that you're using the platform for this session. This is an exclusive invite-only session for primarily targeted to end users. And so we're going to kind of teach you a little bit about everything you need to know about audio specifically. I mean, with an expert, sure, there's probably no company that knows it better than it, especially microphone technology, better than anyone. You see more of their mics on TV and live events than pretty much anyone else's. So I'm excited to be part of this. You're watching this on the launch platform, and so we have some features on here. Obviously, you see us in this live video window, but if you'll look over to your right a little bit, you'll notice that we actually have a Q&A section where you can actually ask questions, and we actually see those questions, and you can ask me a question, ask Ben a question, ask Tim a question. Below that, we have a polling. We're going to track all those poll answers and kind of give you some results as you take those polls. You'll actually see those in real time. That helps us know, kind of what we're talking about here and whether it's getting across or not, and the kind of things you're interested in. Below that is networking, where everyone's talking to each other. If you choose to, you have the ability to reach out to anyone that's on here live. You want to post a question there, we'll watch there, and we'll also look at the Q&A in the top right-hand corner, Tim, so they can post either place if they want to. And so that's pretty simple. This event belongs to the audio experts, Ben and his company, and we're really honored to be bringing them to you because you need to understand. I'll reference an article that was published earlier this week about the importance of microphone technology, making sure that you come across professional when even not just at events like this, but even at a job interview, Tim, because a lot of interviews now are happening on Zoom first or Teams first.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And you got to have a good quality audio. I mean, one of the things that Shure has talked about, and I'm not going to steal Ben's thunder here, but the importance of audio technology, especially as we move into AI, because for that AI to get that information and that data, it has to be able to hear clearly. Ben, you and I did a webinar like 2 weeks ago, and in it, we talked about the digital shift. And we kind of got into this a little bit during that webinar, but I want you to dive a little bit deeper this time. How has Shure migrated and adjusted the company and the products amongst that digital shift?
Right. Like we talked last week, kind of how the company in the last 10 years shifted. And what I kind of wanted to bring up is when you look at the history of Shure, I maybe didn't do a good enough job in the last one to kind of illustrate that Shure is turning 100 years old this year.
Yeah.
Right. That's this month in April. Right. To think of how we've kind of navigated this landscape, and we are not only still here but still leading and innovating is incredible. Right. And when I look at these kind of plug and play devices for work from home, for high end premium room solutions, like we kind of now are able to bridge all the gaps, and we weren't able to do that before, right? And as things are just, everything lives on the network, everything is digital, and it's made things so simple. So when I kind of talk about all of these plug and play devices now, what I'm talking about, if I can share my screen, is the Microflex Advanced system. So this is a whole ecosystem and family of products now that are getting easier and easier to be plug and play every day, right? Back 5-10 years ago, we needed an integrator and we needed help to install a ceiling microphone, and we needed the real expertise to get these things to work the way we wanted them to in our corporate environment. Our work from home microphones 10 years ago were not great, right? They were difficult to use. They were so hard to get set right. You'd have feedback and echo, and now we don't even think about that anymore when we plug in a digital plug and play device in our PCs or our MacBooks, right? It never even enters our mind that there's going to be an audio issue. I think most consumers, most folks at home, if there's a problem, they unplug it and they plug it back in and they expect it to work, right? And we've taken that attitude with our education and experience, and we've launched these products now. So we've got everything from a small desktop microphone, the MXA 310, and these are devices that I'm not really talking about work from home. These are more of our corporate plug and play devices, right? So we've got everything from a small 310 desktop microphone that you would put in the small huddle room, to the MXA 710. That's a linear array microphone that you might put on a desk or a podium, but you could also hide it between the slats in the ceiling. In so many of our new office spaces, we have these awesome new ceilings that make it really tough to put microphones in and lights and speakers, right? And we have these abilities now to be able to do all these different shapes and sizes that get the microphone closer to the talker so that we're more intelligible, because you cannot beat physics, right? And as you mentioned there 2 weeks ago when we were down in Orlando, everything is AI. That's all we talk about is AI tools, AI tools, AI tools. I feel like I'm at Old McDonald's had a farm, AIAO, right? It's how can we make our meetings more intelligible so that nothing gets missed, so that every contributor in that room is recorded properly and their tasks, their action items are all spelled out for them after the meeting, right? And if these products provide that level of intelligibility, then it's only an asset for our companies. So, along that digital line, the other thing Shure did is we wanted to make sure that we have kind of control of that signal path.
Yeah.
So we take that analog signal, which is your voice or your music or your sound, and we convert it to digital, and we put it through our DSP and we encrypt it. And we put it on our network, and if we need to, we send it out through Teams or Zoom or whatever codec we're using for video conferencing, right? Or we can go other routes as well, right? And we can pick and choose how we need to do those things. So now we can go with that audio signal through the codec, right through to the amplifier, and right out of the loudspeakers in the room. And we keep it all in our Shure environment. I think we spoke about the MXN amp and speakers that we have now launched. I think we just briefly spoke about them last time. And again, I'll only do this briefly because it is kind of a niche product. But if you've got a video conference room where you're installing one of our products, and maybe we want to save some infrastructure in that room, we've got some JBLs that are in there from 1999, or some old Tannoys, or maybe some QSC speakers that we want to recycle. We can put this in on the network. It's just a PoE amplifier and hook those speakers back up to it. So now we've got the option to save that infrastructure. We can put that budget towards other things, more microphones, hopefully, right? And we're not putting things in the landfill, which is great. But if we are doing a new installation, then we also have some speakers available. And I'm not going to go through all the specifics of them, but there are about 5 from us now, everything from a small pendant and a small surface mount to ceiling speakers and bigger hanging pendant speakers. So it's just kind of, we've extended the chain. We're trying to make sure that we've got the control all the way through there.
Gary, I want to bring you in on this because you and I were together at ISE when the Microflex was announced, and it doesn't happen often in the AV industry. But when this thing was announced, everybody on the show floor was talking about it. It was a big deal. Talk about why the Microflex matters when it comes to the workspace and the workspace audio.
I mean, I think you have to talk about it in 2 phases, right? You have to talk about the initial launch and the fact that they kind of, and I hate to use this term, but I can't think of a better term, Ben, dumbed the whole thing down quite a bit, where it was a very complicated install. And I think a lot of people took audio for granted because you'd connect it up and it always worked. And as long as you could hear the sound, you were fine with it. And you weren't discerning the differences. And what's interesting is it's amazing when you get out of our industry and you start and you ask people, which I do often, to listen to the nuances between people's voices when they're in a video call and they can't hear them. They don't realize that they all sound the same because most of the mics that people are using are compressing everything. And can you imagine as good as AI is, or as good as any of these systems are, they can't machine learning, can't pick up the difference if there's no frequency difference. And so it's going to throw off, because people look at the transcripts and say, well, this isn't exactly what I said, or this isn't me who said this. Guess what? It's because you're using the built-in microphone in your PC rather than using a higher quality microphone. So I think the concept of dumbing it down, I think, is probably not a good term to use. But when the product first came out, it really simplified building a room, right? And it really did. Ben kind of alluded to the fact that technically, I guess you don't have to use an integrator when you're just wanting to put a mic in the room. Now, you probably want to use an integrator when you're, calibrating it and you're adding other things to the room, like additional displays and things like that. But it did simplify it, because you can use the existing speakers, you can use the existing hardware, and then phase 2 was the next 2 series, and the next 4, and now the next 8 series. That's sort of phase 2. Phase 1 was, okay, we put a mic in the ceiling where the tile used to be. And by the way, they have one that has a speaker and a mic together, which is, to me, astounding.
Yeah.
And then now they added the next 2 wireless last year, the next 4 and 8 system, which we can pop up here. I see the image here. This is game changing for higher education specifically. I can't speak to all aspects of the market, but I can tell you for higher education, the game changer, because you can drop this system into any room without putting anything in a rack. You don't have to redesign your rack. You don't have to rewire. You can use whatever you currently have. So if you have a catch box system there, you can pull out whatever that's connected to, hook this in, and you get a much better quality audio system with a whole bunch of better other features and things like that. It's a little bit more sophisticated, and that's probably the most popular system. Now, the Catchbox is great for the applications that most people put it in, but everyone's wanted to go to a next level where I have the instructor mic, but I also have mics placed around the room, or maybe they want goosenecks because they want something more professional because they're having a panel discussion in that room. Yep. Maybe they want a boundary mic to pick up. We do a lot of collaboration where you have 4 students around a table. You want to put a boundary mic there to pick up there's lots of different applications where I think that system really revolutionized. So I think it's 2 phases. One was to dumb down the complexity of a better quality audio system. The second was now add features and devices to it with the gooseneck mic and the boundary mic, lavalier mic, and a handheld mic. All 4 of those in one system is pretty cool.
It is very cool, and I think Ben and I talked about this, but the other aspect of specifically the next 4, the next 8 is the ability to daisy chain from a networking standpoint each of those base stations. So that what that means is that you don't have to have, let's say you have 3 of those base stations in your classroom or your conference room. You don't have to have 3 drops. You can daisy chain those network drops, so you have access to all that information and everything going on.
I'd like to mention one thing too, Tim, that's not related to Shure. And this, I'm not getting paid to say this. I'm telling you just because I noticed it at ISE. There's a company called Heckler that built a lectern that actually has a slot for the next 2 system where you slide it right into the slot. It was built specifically. I don't even know if Ben even knows this exists, but they actually built. That's how powerful this system was. That a company that builds a lectern for higher education saw it as important enough to not just put a control panel in there, but to put a slot where you slide it right in, and it's designed specifically for the Shure Next 2 wireless system.
We'll have to check them out at InfoComm and see if they've got one for the 4 and the 8 now. So, Ben, you mentioned that Shure's been around for 100 years, right? And I was lucky enough to be Shure's doing a road show around the country between now and the end of June. Part of that presentation is demonstrating the different types of technology that Shure has evolved and innovated over the last 100 years. The very first wireless microphone system. You guys were showing pictures of that. Your speaker systems, the PA systems that go back to, I think, let's say the 60s. So when you look at this space, the workplace, the education space, what would you say is, I guess, the most important one, or the one that really impacts this space the best or the most when it comes to workplace audio?
Well, I think for me, if I'm looking in the corporate environment, in the boardroom, not the single huddle space, small rooms, the larger kind of rooms that you're going to go collaborate, spaces for more than 4 people. The biggest kind of upgrade that we've made is the MXA 920 and all the new features that we've added. The 910 was a 8-speed Ferrari with a manual transmission. And if you knew how to drive it, that's where we called integrators, and they came in, they knew how to drive it, and it was great. If you didn't, you drove it off the track and wrapped it around a tree most of the time, and your room didn't sound great, right? And you had to call in an expert. So with the MXA 920, we put an automatic transmission on it, right? And for most of the tracks out there, it's perfect. We're going to get great times, right? We're going to really put the pedal to the metal. We're going to get some great lap times. Everyone's going to be happy. Can a pro get in that car and put it in manual mode and make it go a little faster and perform a little better? Yes, they can, right? So we've got that option now. So for a lot of rooms where maybe folks were scared of a ceiling microphone before, that MXA 920, the tools that we've added, like virtual acoustic boundary and automatic noise reduction and deverb, like all of these things that we've added to clean up your space after the microphone has picked up the audio is just incredible. And these are all changes that we made to the product for free, right? So if you ordered this product originally and purchased it, none of these extra tools came with it. But we figured out how to make the mic better, and we gave it to our customers for free because we want the best audio solution, right? And if we can add those tools for free to an existing product, then we're going to do that. And the way the product has continued to improve is just incredible. One of my favorite stories, because I was kind of involved in it, I take a little bit of credit, maybe 10% of credit, was when we came out with the new automatic coverage. It's called a dynamic coverage zone. And if you had an office that was 30 by 30 and you wanted the entire office covered, you would draw a square in our software, 30 by 30, and the microphone would automatically send mic lobes out to pick up the active talkers. If there was someone at the door and they were talking and bleeding into the room, that would still also get picked up, and that could be problematic. So what I started doing in my designs was taking another coverage zone and putting it where I didn't want audio to be heard and muting it. That worked really good.
Yeah.
And then our techs in Chicago went, why don't we make that a feature? And they made the virtual acoustic boundaries. So now in the past, it used to just try to ignore the audio from outside coverage zones. Now there's an active listening lobe listening for that sound when you tell it you don't want to hear it, and it brings it in and kills it instead of just ignoring it. So it's actually way more effective. And I was mentioning to you guys earlier today, I was messing around with some settings because my office is 12 by 12, but I was putting a Bluetooth speaker in the hall, and I wanted to see how loud I could get it to go before you could actually hear it on the call. And it was to the point that it was obnoxious in this room. Right? Like what we can do now to remove those sounds is incredible, and you don't need the experience, right? So there is times for integrators, absolutely, right? Like so many of our products in a high-end environment where there's multiple units being installed, it's a complicated system. We need our integrators to come in and help our end users and make sure that everything's going to function properly. But for a lot of rooms too, it's plug and play. Right? And our IT departments can figure it out. They can do it on their own. Our software will help, right? And there's a whole plethora of training classes you can take at the Shure Audio Institute to help you through any of these as well. So having that option now of different routes to put these in rooms is pretty great.
Gary, from your perspective, same kind of question is take a look at the evolution of Shure over the last 100 years, but now here more recently. We think when we talked with Ben, the next two was 13 years ago, right? So let's take a look at maybe the last 10 years, and certainly since COVID. What would you say is some of Shure's best products for the working environment and the office environment?
I mean, I can't speak to the first, say, 75 years, but I can speak to the last 25. But I mean, it is kind of interesting. They do have a microphone, SM58, that has been around for 60 plus years,
Yep.
and it's still the same design. It shows you, and what's happening now. Yeah, what's happening now is I'm trying to think the best way to say it. Just like what's happened with cars. Basically, you're driving around a computer with wheels. That's what's happening with what's happened with what Shure's building now. The advantage of that is it's going to last longer. The tech cycle is going to be longer because you actually have the ability to do firmware and hardware. They're kind of they're gonna, I mean, I guess they're counting on the market growth to be fast enough to make up for the difference of normal cycles being 3 to 5 years. Maybe they're going to be 5 to 7 years, because you now can do the firmware and software upgrade yourself, and the upgrades, so you're not missing the new features. So as they've made the Microflex smarter with some of the features that Ben just mentioned, those you can add those to products you currently have. And as he mentioned, you can take speakers that you've had for 20 years in a room and make them smarter, put them on the network with basically an adapter that doesn't even have to be, by the way, rack mounted. You can put it anywhere. You can hang it on. You can actually attach it to the wall. So it turns it into a network addressable, and you can actually do it speaker by speaker. And I know that sounds crazy, but you could literally take a room that used to have distributed audio and actually now address every single speaker if you wanted to. Now, it's going to be expensive to do it initially, but the long-term value may be big, because everybody's been in a room that's just a little too big, and you're hearing the person who's speaking in the front, but you're not understanding them, because we're not using something like voice lift, which you can do in an analog space by using some of the new digital technologies that Shure has pioneered. And so they've been a leader. And we're not here to talk about live events, but they're pioneering some of the stuff going on in live events with regard to frequency spectrums and accessibility, things like that. We're not even here to talk about that, but that all is part of the heritage. And I think what Shure's done, and I don't want to steal any of Ben's thunder either, because I think what you've done, Ben, is say, look, if you want something for yourself, we have that. If you want something for your IT department to put in, we have that. And if you need something more sophisticated, we have that. And by the way, they all use the same software tool, so you can manage them regardless of which one you get. I personally have 2 at-home units that I use that are Shure branded units. I know a lot of people know that because they've seen me with a purple mic. And the same software I'm using is the same software you'd use to manage a conference room with multiple mics, basically.
No. All right. Before we get to the stuff that Gary's using at home, because I do want to hear that. A reminder: you can ask questions of Ben. You can ask questions of Gary. You can ask questions of me, but I'm not sure you'd want to. Send them over here on the right hand side. We'll answer those as they come in. Ben, but Gary did bring up a good point. We've been talking about home audio, and here's the thing. I know a couple of folks at Shure that work from home, and they have a Microflex microphone in their ceiling. You
I
do.
think Ben's talking on one
yeah.
now. I think he's talking on one now.
That seems a bit overkill on that. So if somebody is working from home, right? And I have no problem telling you guys what I'm using as well. But what does Shure have for those folks that are working from home or just working remotely? As we're traveling.
Yeah, we've got some just absolutely incredible solutions. And I think if anyone who has watched a podcast in their life anytime ever, or has a favorite TikToker, I'll just leave this right here.
Absolutely.
This would be the granddaddy, right? So I'm hiding something here because this isn't really an SM7. This looks like an SM7. So if you're unfamiliar, the SM7 is really the gold standard for podcasting. It really is what started out as a broadcast mic. And as podcasting became more and more popular, it is the one that everyone wants. Now, does it have a couple problems? Maybe. It needs a preamp. So for a lot of folks working from home, we're going to get into a little more expensive than we may want to spend, and it's a little bit more work to set up. So in the last few years, we added to the SM7 its own internal preamp.
Yeah.
So this is the SM7DB. So now this can be connected directly. We have its own preamp in here and XLR outputs. So if we put that with one of our digital audio interfaces, we can just put this directly into the PC. More kind of apt for most folks for a travel mic or inexpensive introduction to podcasting is the MV7i. We originally came out with the MV7. It has been discontinued now because we've added the MV7i, which added an audio network interface to the device. But what this basically has done has taken the same pro level that we had on MXA 920 and all of those pro level products and put into the SM7 for podcasting. We put automatic mode on those devices. We've basically done that on the MV7 for you, right? For most folks, it's going to be just fine for whatever they need to do for podcasting. And if you do need something more in depth and more feature rich, then we can look at the SM7 or the SM7DB. I will show you another one here too. Here, I'll just show you the quick screen here on the website for our MV7i. This is the Shure's US website. So, if you are elsewhere, you can also look at any of your favorite retailers. But absolutely fantastic microphone, and also is included with our Motive Mix software. So that's this here, and this allows you on your desktop now to basically mix and master your own recordings. Gives you the option for raw input, however you would like it to function. Absolutely great. And again, available for free from our website. So, and the last one I'll talk to you about quickly is our brand new MV6. This has just been launched, and we're officially listing it as a USB gaming microphone. However, don't let it convince you that that's all it is. If you need a desktop microphone or a travel mic for $150, you are not going to find something better than this. I actually think it almost sounds as good as an SM7, and it's shocking in that little device how good it sounds.
Hang on.
I know, Tim.
You're getting sacrilegious here, brother.
I know. When you compare dollars and value and performance, it is tough to beat. I was blown away, so I might have to send you one.
I will have to get my hands on one.
Someone in your marketing department is saying, "Wait a minute, he's cannibalizing us here."
That's right. I'm killing SM7 DB sales.
Well, and so I before I get to Gary, because I want him to talk about the NPR article, because this actually feeds right into that. I have used an FM7B for decades, and I'm not kidding about this, decades. Those of you who've heard me talk enough, 100 years ago, I used to work in radio in St. Louis, right? That is what we used at two of the radio stations that I worked at. When I started podcasting, I went out and bought an SM7DB because, again, and Ben's right. That is one of the mainstays in the broadcast world, and has been for years. So when I started podcasting, I'm like, I need a 7DB. Okay, cool, right? And I have used one ever since. Now I do, Ben, I have upgraded to the DB here in my home office because of what you said. It needs a preamp, but that is a 7DB right there. So I will have to get a hold of an MV7 to and I've used the MV7. I've got to get an MV6. I have used the MV7s, and I send them out to folks who either podcast hosts and stuff like that. They're a great microphone. I am old enough and I am stuck in my ways, so I will still hold on to my 7B. Gary, from your perspective, what first of all, what do you use? You mentioned that your purple mic. So what do you use for rAVe TV?
We use MV7, so I guess my mic's been discontinued. So
you might have to get an MV6 then,
or an S7i.
Yeah, like.
But I mean, I love the fact that it can be custom colored, but honestly, it's plug and play. I use it USB. It has XLR, but I use USB. I use the Motive software now, and it's nice because I can take it anywhere. I happen to have two. I have one at my office and one in my house, and it was just cheaper and easier to do it that way for me because it was more efficient. That efficiency cost was worth it. Yeah. But the article that you're referring to, we actually wrote a story about that article. I was driving home listening to NPR like I do every afternoon on Monday afternoon. I heard an article. I heard them cover a study that was done by a professor at Yale University, who we will have on rAVe TV next Wednesday, Tim. And he did a study with about 800 people, and they did various things. They talked through different types of mics built into your laptops, built into your phone, and then professional mics. And they did things like job interviews, based test recordings. And they didn't tell the people who were listening what they were listening for. They just wanted to know, would you hire this person? In some cases, they did a mock interview with the same person with one mic and another mic. Would you hire this person? Yes or no? And the people that used the higher quality mic were getting hired quicker. It was kind of interesting. I think what it came down to is people, when they can see, it's sort of, I guess the analogy I would draw to this is, you remember before the pandemic, before the pandemic would join a meeting and they were joined audio only, they were treated like the stepchild of the meeting because they weren't as important as the person that was there in person. It's the same thing that's happening now. Everyone has a mic. Everyone has a pretty good mic. Everyone knows how to use their mic, I should say. And now we're like, hey, if you got a better mic, you must be more important. I think is what's ended up happening. And by the way, Tim, you do have a voice for radio, so I'm not surprised that is the beginnings of Tim. And some people do. Some people can sound good on any mic, but I can't. My voice is not as strong as yours. So I need that amplification. So I use an MV7. And I honestly, I think I should be on commission because I have sold a lot of those for sure, because you don't have any idea how many people have called me to say, what are you using? Take a picture of your mic, take a picture of the label, send it to me. And yeah, so I should have probably asked for royalties or something, but I'm glad, because what's ended up happening is, in the beginning of the pandemic, I was having to help people adjust their mics. They would get a mic and just plug it in and not even know that you could set it up as that you had even the ability to set up mic various ways to pick up patterns. Basically, nobody really knew what that was at the beginning of the pandemic. Now everybody understands. Well, not everybody, but a number of people that are on mics a lot do understand it. But I think there's a lot more education that has to be done. And I think the thing about audio is you get what you pay for. And we're seeing that now in the consumer world play out in real life with some of the brands that are out there now that are copying or knockoffs of big brands. We're seeing that you get what you pay for.
That kind of brings up a point. I'll step on you there, Tim.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing an awful lot right now too, working for Shure, is customers who through the pandemic and even coming out of the pandemic made budget decisions for products. And now that their hybrid rooms are back up and running, those budgets were not enough, and they're not happy with the decisions they made, because they got what they paid for ultimately, right? And one of the things I'm really happy about with Shure is how we integrate so well with so many of our partners and competitors, right? Where if you have a room that needs a little bit more help, because we live in that digital world, we can take any of our MXA products, and as long as the in-room PC that you're using now has a USB input, we can probably add a mic and help you out, right? So you don't have to completely remove everything. We can supplement some of our partners to help make sure we can bring that room up to what we expect in 2025, not 2020 standards, right? Because it has changed so dramatically.
Well, and the other part I was going to bring in, Ben, is you mentioned the MV7i, you mentioned the MV6, something else that you guys have got that I've used as well, and that is your Move Mic line. And that is there is a plug, right? There is a USB-C plug, either into your phone, into your computer, but it's a lapel.
Right.
Talk about the thinking behind this, and some of the use cases for this when it comes to, again, remote work from home.
Right, absolutely. So the Move Mic's available in a couple of different formats. Either a single lapel mic, a stereo lapels, or stereo lapels with an additional transmitter. So the Move Mics can natively connect to any Bluetooth device streaming Facebook Live. So you can do a Facebook Live directly using these microphones, or you can stream and record into our Motive software on whatever device you're recording. That's when you're connecting the mics directly.
Yep.
If you use the transmitter, you can connect to any device with a USB-C input, right? Because you're connecting those mics to the transmitter. And then any camera you have that has a USB input or headphone input, we can take from that transmitter and turn this into your audio source. So for work from home, you can connect them to your laptop if you've got the transmitter. Now you've got stereo lapels for your meeting. Think of 10 years ago, if you wanted to do a stereo mobile recording with 2 channels of audio. Think of the kit you had to carry, right? Think of the gear, the record. Now it's here, clip this on. I'm going to clip on mine. You're the left channel, I'm the right channel, and we're going to do a quick recording here. Like that is insane to me, right? So the first thing I recorded with this was a boys hockey game, U18 Ontario Minor Hockey Association hockey game. I put one on my son and one on the goaltender, and it was 60 minutes of unusable Canadian curse words. But was it ever fun? Because you could literally hear the boys breathing. You could hear the skates. It was incredible audio, just completely unusable in public other than in the locker room. So,
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben. You can actually sum the audio though, so they can both be mono. Because
can.
we've done that. That's how we use them. For those of you who follow our broadcasts at trade shows, that's what we use.
Right.
We switched to the Move mic last year, and we set them to sum the audio so that you're hearing the audio come out of left and right, because we're not always doing one-on-one interviews, and some people don't like that left only, right only.
Oh, absolutely.
When they're watching it back on their laptop or they're watching it back at home. So you can sum the audio. So it actually has some pretty sophisticated capabilities. And by the way, it uses the same software as pretty much anything else out there to manage it. So it is simple to use, and it's pretty powerful. I'm really impressed with it.
Good. Yeah, I've had some really good fun with them, and some great success at trade shows as well. Just to be able to do a quick interview, and again, I do them in mono most of the time. The stereo is fun, but if you're doing a recording, it actually gets a little tedious after a while if you're listening back in stereo, because it's just bouncing back and forth. But it's great to be able to do it. And we also have, you're going to see more and more folks online using these for performance. Right? When they're doing little gigs and taking their recordings, they're using these instead of the higher end stuff, because it gets so compressed on TikTok and all these other places anyways, that they're okay with it for performance. And it's so neat to see how and these kids just completely innovate how to use them. So tape to bottoms of skateboards is what I was listening to yesterday. So that was fun.
Yeah, they're very, very small. They're I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches long by 1/2 inch wide. By the way, Tim, did you notice the comment from Stephen Shatola?
Yes.
He said the Shure podium mic. I like the point that you made that it can be used as a tabletop. What is the limit to the number of mics that can be used before we risk interference, RF issues? Exploring this product for potential tabletop events that require 4 to 6 mics and a panelist, Ben.
Yeah. So again, the thing with wireless frequency, as far as interference goes, is it depends on 100 things. So I can't give you an answer, right? If you look up your city in our Shure frequency finder, you're going to find the frequencies that are recommended for your local area for wireless. But then you also have to consider who else is in the building. If someone else above you is already using a Shure system or another wireless system from any other manufacturer, we're going to want to do a wireless scan in that room. It's called a spectrum analyzer, and it's going to see in that room what frequencies are available, and then we can take a look at how we're going to do that. The MXW Next system has a built-in frequency analyzer, a spectrum analyzer. So if you just put it in the room, and it would scan and find open frequencies, there are very few places in the world that you would have a problem with 4 to 6 channels, right? Unless there was literally someone right on top of you using the same frequencies at the same time. Our software is able to mitigate that and make sure that we're not standing on top of each other.
What about the number of mics?
So we can do up to 40 channels of MXW. Okay. If you needed more than that, we have other ranges. We have our Axient Digital range. We have a whole bunch of other options that we could look at. And actually, now that I've brought it Axient Digital, again, not a part of the market we were really going to talk about today, but if folks are familiar with anyone on stage performing and you see a Shure earbud, the ones that wrap around the back, that's probably a Shure earbud sticking in there, okay? And what they're using that for is in-ear monitoring. And we have just launched our first digital in-ear monitors. It's called ADPSM, and it is turning the industry on its head, because we can operate in frequencies we couldn't operate before. We can operate in a clarity that we've never been able to operate before. The one downside with digital transmission for artists like this is that it takes a little bit longer than analog to come back into your ears for you to hear you. There's just a touch more latency. But what we're finding out is that performers don't care. They're
You
just,
get used to it. You get
they're
used to it.
so happy with the clarity and
Yeah.
everything else that the brain compensates for it, and they're loving it. So this ADPSM launched around Christmas. I had a kit for one day that I was able to take a look at and see it, and then I had to drive and meet someone in Toronto and drop it off so that it could go to, I'm not going to name names, but some very high-end Canadian performers. I was pretty happy. So I didn't get to meet him, but he was pretty famous for a summer of '69, and they were like, they wanted it right away. And as a Canadian, I was obligated. I had to deliver to Mr. Adams.
Brian Adams. But
Really,
Tim, I wanted to thank Stephen for posting that question and remind people that if you'll post questions right now, we will ask Ben those questions. Don't be shy, because if there's
anything that
things you
you
want to know about the hardware or software, even system questions, feel free to post questions.
So Ben, I want to go back to Stephen's question for a second, because you mentioned that we could do 40 channels. And this is probably going to be the same type of questions. There's 100 things here, but how many channels can we do before we risk interference as well?
Right. Well, and again, that depends on if there's other operating frequencies and other operating devices in that area, right? So we can do 40 in standard mode. I believe we can get even more in high density mode, but again, it's going to depend on that specific location, and we would want to get in there and do a spectrum analyzer. The worst thing you could do is just go buy the same thing your buddy bought, because people think that if they go on their wireless system and just one puts it on channel 1 and one puts their other one on channel 2, and they're just going to be fine and they're never going to step on each other. That's really not how it works, right? So take the time, particularly if you're going to invest, because sure, microphones are not inexpensive. We don't make cheap products, right? When you're going to buy something from us, you're going to use it for many years. So take that time to make sure that the frequencies you purchase are correct for your area. Now, MXW does not matter. It operates in the DECT frequency band, which is very close to Wi-Fi, and it does frequency mitigation and avoidance. So you do not need to worry about it for MXW, the new Next 2 and the Next 4 and 8 systems, because they take care of it all for you. I'm talking about more of our standard, 2-channel, 4-channel, and 8-channel wireless systems.
I also want to bring back the Move mic really quickly, because one of the setups that I've seen are executives who don't necessarily like that microphone, right? They don't want something bulky. Talk about the setup that you would do when it comes to using and leveraging basically a lapel for somebody who, again, they either travel a lot or they don't want to, worry about having a microphone or the placement of a bigger microphone and using that as their conferencing microphone.
Right. So to use the Move mic as a kind of portable or any kind of Teams mic, really, what you need is this device here. So this is the transmitter that's included with 2 of the packages, right? So now you can see here, that's a sled mount that can actually be removed. But that would be if you were going to mount it on, let's say, your Canon camera or your Sony camera, and then you take the included 3.5 millimeter output jack from this device into your camera, and that's your input. Now we can do that with a laptop as well, or a PC. And as soon as you put that in and plug it in, it would just automatically recognize it as an audio input-output device on the laptop, right? You would select Shure Lav 1 as your Teams mic, and that would be it. It would just be clipped on here. Now, excuse me, there is no way to do that without the transmitter. You can't just pair the lavs directly to your PC.
Okay.
The only thing you can directly pair the lavs to is your Android phone going into our Motive software or into Facebook Live. And I need to make that clear, because one of the biggest complaints about this product is I can't record directly into TikTok, or I can't record directly into other softwares, but no one really does that, right? You need that. If you want to go into other software, you need that transmitter. So it's a great product, and I use them on the road for Teams meetings all the time, because I don't want to carry this in my laptop bag, right?
Yeah.
So I throw my Move Mic kit in there, and it works really great, really slick.
Yeah, very cool. Again, if you got questions for Ben, you have questions for Gary, go ahead and type them in, and we will get those here in a second. One other thing you said there about the MV7, and that's the MV7i with the networking interface. Can you talk to somebody like explain it to me as I tell my kids, explain it to me like I'm 5. What
Yeah.
does the networking audio part mean?
So it gives us a second channel. So
Okay.
if I'm doing a recording of myself, which I will not make any of you suffer through, I still think I'm a good singer until I hear myself come back, right? That's the problem having good microphones too, is they're pretty accurate. But if I wanted to bring in my guitar, I could bring in a second audio source into that network interface. That way I can do my own mix now live. So perfect for home recording, but also great for folks who are using their laptop and their MV7i on the road when they're doing small gigs, when they're doing small recording sessions. You've basically got the ability to mix now right on your phone, right on your laptop. With it all came for free with your microphone. Like that's a pretty good package. I'm not. This isn't really my market. I'm one of these boring corporate bank guys, but I have a lot of fun with it, and it allows.
Well, I can give you an actual practical application if you want.
Perfect.
In our world, practical application would be that you have a mic that you're micing yourself, but you also want to show a video while you're talking, and you actually want to use the audio from the video on your laptop. You can actually do that and not have to have the mic at the speaker of the laptop. You can actually use it as a second input, and not have to worry about switching it. And I think that's a pretty common application where you want to do something more professional, and you're not using Teams or Zoom. You're using any platform for that matter. You can't do that in Facebook. You can't do it in LinkedIn. You can't do it in YouTube. You can't do it in TikTok or any of those without a feature like that. So you either need a 2-input mixer, or you can use this feature.
Well, and the other part of that is, and this goes back to Ben asking, if we remember setting up a 2-channel recording rig, because Gary and I have both been doing this for a minute, and we both have done that. If you want to do an interview, if I wanted to sit down with Gary, physically in person, and we wanted to have 2 different channels, and we didn't want to share our own mic, we could have 2 separate microphones, right? He could have one, I could have the other, but it would be one interface, right? It would be one actual USB connection into the software, into Teams, into whatever it is you wanted to do, with each of us having our own microphone.
Yeah, it just opens up. It's Shure, as usual, is just we've figured out, okay, the MV7 was something we needed, right? There was a demand for a great podcasting mic, a great travel mic, that still had the qualities that we know from the SM7. And then we realized, oh, well, it's kind of missing. Wouldn't it be great if it did this? And literally, because we needed to upgrade from the micro USB to USB-C, they went, oh, well, we might as well, let's take a look and put an interface in it for the same price, right? So again, probably one of the functions of being a privately held company, we don't have investors to report to. We are owned by the employees. So Shure makes sure the products that come out are right for our customers, maybe not right for profit all the time, but right for our customers and right for us as a company. And I'm so proud to see these products, and we just continue to innovate every year. There's new stuff coming. If you guys signed NDAs, I could tell you some more stuff, but we're always working on trying to figure out ways to make calls sound better, to make recordings sound better, and to just make everything easier. That's kind of the goal now.
Hey, Tim, I'd like to bring one thing up and go back to one thing that Ben mentioned that I think he's underselling. At this year's ISE, like the week before ISE, they launched a whole series of 5 different speakers. And this is a new market for sure. Shure has actually been in the speaker market-ish a little while, never really with anything substantial, but they now have a family of 5: surface mount, in ceiling, in wall,
Pendant.
the same, yeah, and the 2 pendants, and of course they have the same microflex that they've had, but this means that now they're full service on audio side for small, medium, and large meeting rooms, and I think that needs to be mentioned. I think that it's a part of it's interesting because I have found that the Shure people that I know are less comfortable with the speaker side of things than they are with the microphone side of things, but it's also new.
So it's funny, I was a loudspeaker guy for about 20 years before I started with Shure. And one of the first projects I got to work on when I got here was speakers. It was pretty awesome. So the thing I want to point out with Shure's new speakers is they're incredible and they sound amazing for video conference and boardrooms, right? I don't want folks to think that Shure's in the speaker market again, right? We are in the video conference speaker market. So these speakers are for video conference rooms only, right? They are voiced for, and when I say voiced, I mean tuned, and the crossover is set for the human voice to replicate the human voice so that your far end call is incredibly intelligible. That's what we're looking for, right? I already know customers that love our brand that want to put these in their home and they want to put them, beside their television. You're not going to be happy with that because that's not what they're meant for. So if you want other products, great, but maybe don't put these in a dance club, right? Like these are meant for video conference, and it's great because people are so excited that we've got them again that I just want to caution folks that these are video conference. They look great, they sound great, and again, it gives us the ability now to have the entire room on a Shure purchase order, one vendor, one complaint line, and one group that you can call and thank when you're super happy with your install at the end. So available in black and white there. Gary's showing the MP1 is the small pendant. This uses what's called a BMR driver. So it's a balanced mode radiator. It's actually a point source driver, and it uses the same driver in the MP3, the surface mount there. Now consider out of our PoE Plus amplifier, you can get 99 decibels out of the small pendant and 96 decibels out of the surface mount. If you need that in your conference room, you're in trouble. Like that's really loud. And then we've got the pendant and the ceiling speaker, the MP5 and the MP6. Now these both sound much better musically than the small ones because they've got more air volume. So you've got a little more bottom end, right? But they are really tuned for voice conference. They sound incredible. And I'm really looking forward to people being able to see these out in the market as we kind of make this new kind of restart in the speaker brand. So.
And I think what's interesting here is even though people are going to want to use these in bars and restaurants, what they're really shooting for here is the conference room ceilings that are open, and also huddle spaces. Like you now can add audio to huddle spaces. That's not just a video bar.
Yeah.
Well, and we touched on it very quickly, but it allows us to. Don't forget that you can do voice lift with an MXA 920 with our ceiling microphones, right? And using digital speakers like this, although the speakers themselves aren't digital transmission to the speaker actually makes it easier to do voice lift because we can zone things much easier when you're using smaller amps like this, as opposed to one big amp in the rack. And you're trying to figure out all the zones. We can do it physically and zone them for voice lift. It's pretty neat now.
Well, as we wrap up here, guys, I want you to take a look and Ben, we didn't sign NDAs, and so you be careful what I'm going to ask you here. But take a look at the next 6 months to a year, and where do you see this space going when it comes to whether that's this company going full return to office, this company doing a hybrid model, but where do you see the audio technology and the speaker, both from the speaker side and the microphone side, helping this new version of collaboration and this new version of working?
For me, I think what really sets Shure apart is that you're going to get premium audio with very little effort now, right? And that's where this space needs to go. As the whole push back to the office, it's coming. There are plenty of corporations already that are making people go back. The hybrid solution, I believe, is the future, right? And I think Sure is in a great place to embrace it and help folks make sure that these meetings are intelligible and that everyone is heard equitably in these meetings, right? Because that's what we want. Because bad data is bad data, and we don't want that, right? We can't have um, unintelligible meetings where our end results aren't up to par. We have to make sure that everyone can be heard and that we're all set.
All right, Gary, same kind of question. What do you see, both from a sure standpoint and just technology in general, helping folks collaborate better as we all kind of work our way back into a hybrid model?
I see more collaboration between brands. I think more companies are going to start working together to certify and to make sure things work properly. I don't think Shure is trying to create an ecosystem where you use all Shure stuff. They're trying to provide a solution when somebody asks, but they're also going to work with all the other brands that are out there to make sure that their mics work with their other stuff that's out there, both from an audio standpoint and a video standpoint. I think that's going to grow. I think that's the biggest thing we're going to see is more certification programs, more collaboration between brands. And like Ben, I agree with Ben, we are going to be in a hybrid world, and we're going to be Mondays and Fridays. People are going to work from home. Tuesday and Thursday, people work from the office. So you're going to schedule meetings around that, and you're going to need your equipment to work flawlessly. And we're going to eliminate the stepchild of the meeting with some of the new technology. We're not there yet. We still have a little ways to go. I think what Shure has done, they've taken a leadership position, but there's still other work that needs to be done. And I think you're going to see some creative things come about over the next 2 years. I think you're going to see some new stuff come about over the next 2 years that I think Shure will be one of those companies that's leading there. And I think you got to pay attention.
All right. Well, guys, thanks so much. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. Ben, somebody wants to find out more about Shure. How do they do that?
You can reach out to me at cookb@shure.com or check out shure.com.
All right. Mr. K, I'm going to have you take us another tour through this because to let folks know how they can rewatch this and where they can rewatch it and engage with us.
Well, you go back to this page. If you want to forward this to other people, all you got to do is have them set up a launch account or use your account, LAVNCH, and then you have access to everything that we do. But certainly this session, you can refer people to. This recording will live on this site in about an hour. It'll appear back here, and it'll be here forever with all the links to everything we talked about already embedded in it. So, it'll just live on for years. It'll just hopefully be here for a long time. I think this is good information. We'll also push this out through social media and also how to get in touch with Ben.
All right, very good. For me, for Tim Albright, for Gary K, for Ben Cook, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Have a great day.